It's no secret SUVs are taking over. More than 220,000 Australians bought a compact SUV like this last year, and nearly 20,000 of them had that badge on the front. The ads will tell you they're easier to drive, roomier inside, and will overnight turn you into an adventure-loving thrill seeker with a kayak on the roof and a bicycle on the back. But if all you're after is a cheap to run, cheap to buy city runabout that's spacious enough inside, but doesn't need to carry 7 passengers in comfort or cross the Nullarbor, do you really need an SUV? That's the question we're going to answer today. We've assembled a Toyota Yaris Hatchback and a Toyota Yaris Cross SUV, and we're going to go through their interiors, see what they're like to drive, see how much fuel they use, how much they cost, and how much you get for your money. Let's get started. Both of these cars were a Yaris badge, but it's not quite as simple as this one being a jacked up version of this one. The Yaris Cross is about 25 centimeters longer and 7 centimeters wider than the Yaris Hatch. But what matters for most buyers is height, 1580 millimeters for the Yaris Cross and 1505 for the Yaris Hatch, which would in theory mean you sit higher and have more space inside the cabin. The wheelbases, distance between the front and the rear wheels of these two cars is about identical, which means that on paper at least, knee room should be about the same, being the front and the rear. But first, let's talk about how much they cost. The Yaris we're testing is the top of the range ZR Hybrid, priced from $33,260 before on-road costs. With the bronze and black paint on our test car, it comes to about $38,500 drive away in New South Wales. Meanwhile, we've got the GR Sport version of the Yaris Cross, which adds sport suspension, red brake calipers, unique 18-inch wheels, suede and fake leather seats, and a host of GR badges. It's priced from $36,000 before on-road costs, or with the white and black paint on our test car, about $41,400 drive away in New South Wales. A Yaris Cross GXL would have been a closer match at $33,000 before on-road costs, but one was not available for testing. It's the same car apart from the GR Sport extras. Shared features between the Yaris Hatch and the Yaris Cross include LED headlights, folding mirrors, privacy glass, a 7-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, front and rear parking sensors, keyless entry and start, single zone climate control, a USB-A port, and a suite of advanced safety technology. Features unique to the Yaris Hatch include 16-inch alloys, fabric sport seats, a 60/40 split folding rear seat, head-up display, embedded satellite navigation. Meanwhile, the Yaris Cross gets the GR Sport extras, plus 18-inch wheels, a 360-degree camera, and 40/20/40 split folding rear seats. Alright, sitting inside the Yaris Hatch. This generation of Yaris came out in 2020, and it hasn't changed much inside since then. It's never been the flashiest car inside, but that's a good thing and a bad thing. All the controls are easy to learn and master. You've got a normal volume dial up here, very regular air conditioning dials for your key controls, and everything in this cabin is sensibly laid out. There's no learning curve, just get in and drive. These seats, they're not heated and they're not power adjustable, but the fabric is quite comfortable though. We're not quite sure how this white and grey design will age over time if you're the kind of person who likes a Macca's drive-through or eating a chocolate bar in the car. There's space on the dashboard and under the climate controls for smartphones, wallets, keys, etc. And the glove box is a pretty decent size, but the door bins are on the small side and there's no center console box to store valuables in, which is pretty annoying, even in this class. As for amenities, you've got one USB port, one 12-volt socket, a head-up display in front of the driver, which is something you don't often see in a car of this size, plus single-zone climate control, keyless entry and start, and a manual handbrake. This 7-inch touchscreen up here has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto through a wired connection, which is what you'll be using most of the time, though the base Toyota system powering it is pretty slow and it's getting quite old. It's being replaced in newer Toyota cars by a more up-to-date, more contemporary system, but it hasn't spread to the Yaris just yet. It's also got embedded satellite navigation and support for AM, FM and DAB digital radio. The instruments in front of me are pretty basic. You've got a digital readout for gears, for speed, and things like fuel and temperature gauge. And there's a small digital display right in the middle, but it does the job without being too flashy. In the back now, and look, it's safe to say this is not a big car. I'm 6'1" or 186 centimeters tall, and space is pretty tight back here. My knees are up against the seat in front, my hair is brushing the roof, and my toes, although they have decent room, it's still a pretty narrow cabin, and quite a dark one at that, with this black headliner. Though these seats in this sort of grey colour do help with that. There aren't many amenities back here either. There are no USB ports, no air vents, no fold-down armrest, and only one map pocket behind the passenger seat. Being a hatchback, you do have to lower yourself down into the car rather than just stepping across, which may be a consideration for some buyers. Alright, head over to the Yaris Cross. What's different in here compared to the Yaris Hatch? Well, not a lot, to be honest. The dashboard's the same, the infotainment screen, the instruments, all the key controls are all shared with the hatchback. Most of the differences are related to this specific GR Sport variant. So you get this suede and fake leather upholstery on the seats. The seats themselves are pretty comfortable, though they're not quite as comfortable or as plush as the cloth seats in the Yaris Hatch. You also got metal look pedal covers, GR badges on the steering wheel and the seats, and black accents around the place. Storage space, the design of the dashboard is all the same as the Yaris Hatch. Though of course, this being the SUV, you have a little bit more headroom and you sit higher over the road. Other changes is an electric parking brake, not a manual one. And this GR Sport doesn't get a head-up display, though you can get a Yaris Cross Urban, which does have that. As with the Yaris Hatch, most of the materials around this cabin are hard and scratchy plastics, particularly up here on the doors. They do have some leather-like material on the dash and this suede covering on the door armrests, though the plastic underneath them is quite hard. In the back, there's immediately more space than the Yaris Hatch. You've got a little bit more knee room here, a lot more headroom, I'm no longer touching the ceiling, and a little bit more toe room under the seat too, because of course you do sit a little bit higher because this is an SUV. There is a fold-down armrest, it's the middle section of the seat down here. You've got two cup holders in it. Visibility out the back is better than the Yaris Hatch, though again, it's still no Bentley back here. There's no rear air vents, there's no USB ports. Toyota claims 390 litres of boot space for the Yaris Cross and 270 litres for the Yaris Hatch. You can just see the difference. The Yaris Cross's boot is deeper and wider. Both of these cars have removable luggage dividers, though in the Yaris it's a single piece, whereas in the Yaris Cross it's a two-piece design, which makes it a bit easier to store small items and large items and keep them from rolling around in the boot. The rear seats in both cars fold down for storing longer items, though in the Yaris it's a 60-40 split, while in the Yaris Cross it's a 40-20-40 split, with that middle 20 being the centre armrest. Makes it a bit easier to store long planks of wood from a trip to Bunnings, for example, while still keeping two passengers seated in the rear. Both cars have space-saver spare wheels under the floor, which is great in an era when car makers are increasingly moving towards tyre inflator kits, which aren't great for more than a small puncture on the side of the road. Both cars are fitted as standard with autonomous emergency braking, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, lane centering assist, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and traffic sign recognition. Each has 8 airbags and is covered by a 5-star safety rating from 2020 testing. Powering both cars is a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder petrol engine and electric motor, which produce 85 kilowatts combined. It is sent to the front wheels through a continuously variable automatic transmission. Right, on the road in a Toyota Yaris. Now 85 kilowatts isn't a lot, even for a small car like this, but because of that hybrid system, it feels really perky around town. You can hear right now we're driving silently on electric power. It does that until about 20 or 30 k's an hour, just depending on how aggressive you are with the accelerator pedal. Now, of course, if you need more acceleration, you put your foot down a little bit more, petrol engine does kick on and it can get a little bit noisy. And it can struggle a bit too. If you're getting up to highway speeds or trying to complete an overtake, it's not the most powerful car in the world, but of course, this is not a sports car, it's a city hatchback. This ZR has the biggest wheels in the Yaris range, 16 inches, but comfort over bumps is pretty good. You're gonna hit a speed bump now, and it soaks it up pretty nicely. Same goes for potholes, imperfections in the road. It's a pretty comfortable experience. Now, of course, it's not a magic carpet. You do feel little lumps and bumps, but on the whole, it's very comfortable and very easy to live with. The steering is light and accurate around town. It's got a small turning circle, just over 10 meters. And overall, it's pretty easy to park. You've got front and rear parking sensors, a reversing camera, though of course it's not the highest resolution camera out there. Same goes for the Yaris Cross as well. On the open road, it doesn't feel like a small car. You're not blown away by trucks on the freeway, but it also does feel light on its feet, nice and nimble, and overall it's pretty fun to drive. The steering can be a little bit too light at highway speeds at times, or on a nice winding road, but overall it's pretty good. Remembering this is not a sports car, it is a small hatchback. At highway speeds, it's pretty quiet. There's not too much tyre or wind noise. Though, of course, if you call that petrol engine into action to do an overtake or speed up to off an on-ramp, it does get a little bit shouty. Behind the wheel of the Yaris Cross. Now, there's a lot similar about this car to the Yaris Hatch, namely the same 3-cylinder engine, the same hybrid system, but it doesn't feel exactly the same to drive. For one, you sit higher, but the Yaris Cross is 100 kilograms heavier than the Yaris Hatch to drive, which means it doesn't feel quite as perky off the mark on electric power, and you can feel the petrol engine working harder and kicking in more often. So it's not quite as frugal on fuel. We'll get to that in a moment. This GR Sport model gets sport suspension, and look, you can feel it. As you can see here, it's not quite as nice as the Yaris Hatch over bumps. It's not too stiff or harsh to live with by any means. You do feel little ripples in the road that the Yaris Hatch irons out, particularly on a country road where it can feel a little bit jittery at times. Again, it's not the end of the world, and if you don't like the sporty ride of this car, there are other models in the Yaris Cross range that will feel more comfortable over bumps. On the open road though, the GR Sport upgrades make the Yaris Cross more fun and confident inspiring to drive than the Yaris Hatch. It's more composed and tied down at speed, there's not too much body roll, and the steering is heavier, which makes it feel a little bit more reassuring. On the highway though, it's not quite as quiet as that Yaris Hatch. There's more tyre noise and more road noise, which is something you do notice on a longer journey. Before we finish up, let's chat about fuel economy. Toyota claims fuel economy in mixed urban and highway driving of 3.3 litres per 100 kilometres for the Yaris Hatch and 3.8 litres per 100 kilometres for the Yaris Cross. On the same test loop, which included some suburban driving and a fair amount of highway driving, we saw 3.6 litres per 100 from the Yaris and 4.5 litres per 100 from the Yaris Cross. In exclusively city driving, expect to see fuel consumption go up to about 4 litres per 100 for the Yaris Hatch and 5 litres per 100 kilometres for the Yaris Cross. Both cars accept 91 octane regular unleaded fuel. So, the verdict. The Yaris Hatch is cheaper to buy, more comfortable around town, perkier on the road, more fuel efficient, and better equipped, with features like a head-up display you don't normally see at cars at this price. However, the Yaris Cross has a roomier interior, a bigger boot, and feels more sure-footed on the open road. Ultimately, which one of these cars you favour depends on your preferences. The higher seating position and roomier interior of the Yaris Cross, or the lower fuel bill and longer equipment list of the Yaris Hatch. Which one would you pick? Let us know in the comments below. If there are money, we'd be buying the Hatch. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, click subscribe to stay up to date with all of our latest videos, and click the link in the description to head over to Drive.com.au to read the full written comparison on these two cars.